Okay, welcome to Two Smart Guys. Today we are going to be reviewing Obi-Wan Kenobi, episode 6. Welcome, Necromancer.
Hello, hello. How are we doing?
I'm doing very well. And yourself?
Okay enough, even after watching this.
Oh, I wonder why you would say such a thing. Shall we just dive right in and try to make this one a bit shorter than usual?
I think we should.
Okay.
I'd have to say I wasn't terribly disappointed with it, but as far as I'm concerned, it might as well be a comic book.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not official for me. I mean, obviously it destroys A New Hope, things that happen in A New Hope. Can they stitch it together? Like Frankenstein's monster, I suppose they could. But yeah.
We'll see where we go with it. Okay, I'm going to save my my opinions for after we do the summary, if that's okay.
Well, we can do a summary rather quickly, I think.
Oh, I think so. Let's dive in, shall we? So,
Yep.
firstly, we are on Tatooine, and we see that Reva has arrived on Tatooine, and she is looking specifically for a farmer named Owen. From there, we move out into space. We are on Vader's Star Destroyer, and we find that Vader's Star Destroyer is chasing the Star Tour's ship that is escaping with Obi-Wan. And Leia is consoling the passengers as though she were a leader with, I don't know, roughly 20 years of leadership experience. Hyper mature. Right? Go ahead. Tell me about the chase.
Really, you've got a Star Destroyer shooting at a small transport and it can't catch up to a small transport. Where are the fast TIE fighters? Seriously? The writers do not care about Star Wars at all.
No.
They don't care about how it works. Yeah, and much like in Spaceballs, obviously the gunner in the Star Destroyer's got cross-eyed.
yeah, I did notice that. The
Ridiculous.
Same people who make the stormtrooper rifles must be making the sights on the Star Destroyer. So then we're back down on Tatooine, and we see Luke and Owen buying speeder parts. Oh, the belt broke on the speeder. Somebody broke the belt on the speeder, and we get the impression that Luke is a bit of a burden to Uncle Owen. The shopkeeper says, "You're a patient man," and Owen replies, "I'm not that patient." So we get the feeling that Owen really doesn't like having Luke around. Obi-Wan, we're back on the escape ship, and Obi-Wan informs everybody that he intends to draw Vader off. Well, this is okay. This is a heroic move for me. Other people seem to think that Obi-Wan is a bit surrender happy, but I look at this as more in character with Obi-Wan. Like, he's willing to fight the army himself to save the normal people. This is what a Jedi would do. Back on Tatooine, we find Owen and Beru have discovered that Reva is after them, and she is after, well, they assume Luke directly. And Beru takes charge and tells Owen how they are going to deal with it in no uncertain terms, but kindly. Obi-Wan takes a dropship to a nearby planet. The planet, we never mentioned the name of it. It's unspecified. It is a kind of interesting environment, I thought. Vader follows Obi-Wan's dropship with the entire Star Destroyer, leaving the rebels to flee. And this is where I thought it's not as though he could send waves and waves of TIE fighters and bombers after the rebels while he chases down, or vice versa. Maybe he continues, the Star Destroyer can go off and continue chasing the rebels with its, fleet of fighters and bombers. And then Vader can get in one of his own little ships and chase Obi-Wan. But of course, they don't do that. Back on Tatooine, Owen tells Luke the Tuskens are coming to hide and to run if anything goes wrong. And now we go back to Obi-Wan. So lots of cutting back and forth in these scenes. We find that Obi-Wan has landed on the planet, and he has Lola, the little droid. Oh, thank goodness Vader is pursuing in his shuttle, but it's okay because Obi-Wan has Lola. And Lola is going to give him bravery and luck, make him feel better. Back on Tatooine, Reva is outside the Lars homestead, and night has fallen. And then we move back to the planet finally, and Vader and Obi-Wan face off. Vader lands his shuttle, steps out of it, and walks towards Obi-Wan. And he strides towards Obi-Wan. I noticed this stride is reminiscent of David Prowse and how he would stride when he was playing Darth Vader. They're finally paying attention a little bit to how Vader moves. And Vader says, "Have you come to destroy me, Obi-Wan?" And Obi-Wan says, "I will do what I must," which is nice. I think that's a nice callback to his line
Good.
in Revenge of the Sith. Then Vader says to him, "Then you will die." The battle is joined, and Vader, he still really isn't fighting like we see him in Empire Strikes Back or in Return of the Jedi. I think he's much too agile in this duel. You know, he should fight like he's
a
swinging
lot
like a
more-
huge war hammer, not like he's swinging like a
Yeah.
light plastic tube or something like that.
He's a lot more agile now. A little bit reminiscent at the end of Rogue One,
Right.
which is probably a bit better, a bit more dynamic. I don't mind. It's okay. Their fighting was basically okay. What bothered me is Obi-Wan overpowering Vader. Yeah, no. That's not how Vader fights at all. If Obi-Wan gets an advantage, it's by getting inside his guard. It's not by overpowering him. You can't do that with Vader. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Even if Vader is 80% the strength that he was before, or 80% the power of Yoda now that his arms and legs were cut off, as George Lucas had mentioned, he's still at least on a par with Obi-Wan. So plus he has physical strength to add to the force that he has. So yeah, no. What did you think when you saw it?
Well, like I said, I would have liked to have seen Vader use large, sweeping, powerful strokes and swinging technique like he used in The Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi. I don't really think of Vader in the suit as Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. I did like Obi-Wan's fighting. It was more reminiscent of what we saw in Revenge of the Sith, though not quite as complex and complicated, because they did take it a bit too far. And this, I was thinking, you know, I went back to the movie The Dark Knight. Do you remember the old wrestler Zeus, big, huge black wrestler? And he has this scene where he's on the ferry at the end of The Dark Knight. And they have to choose. It's a ferry full of prisoners and a ferry full of civilians, and they have to choose whether they're going to blow the other ferry up so they can survive. And Zeus stands up and he comes up to the ferry driver, captain, or whomever it is, and he says he's holding the detonator, and he says to him, "Give it to me. Give it to me, and I'll do what you should have did 10 minutes ago. You can say I took it from you. Give it to me." And as soon as I see Obi-Wan fighting like this, I remember that scene, because I imagine that this Obi-Wan must have been speaking to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who we've been seeing up until now, behind the scenes before the scene was filmed, and took his lightsaber and said, "Give it to me. Give it to me, and I'll do what you should have bloody been doing 6 episodes ago, for crying out loud."
That's true. That's
You've been
so
a wanker
true.
for 6 episodes. Let's
Absolutely,
finally see some real Obi-Wan, and at least they give us some real Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
But it was Leia who helped Obi-Wan find himself, because men are no longer allowed to have agency in Hollywoke.
No, definitely not.
That's why Beru had to tell Owen what to do.
And that leads us into our next scene, where Owen and Beru fail to stop Reva. So although, I mean, Beru said 3 things. She said that they were going to fight, that they didn't want to get anybody else hurt, and that they would be enough. Owen and Beru would be enough. So it looks like they actually weren't enough, Beru, because they failed to stop Reva. We go back to the duel, where Vader collapses the terrain underneath Obi-Wan using the Force. And Vader seems to have learned his lesson, as he now has taken the high ground as we look up towards Vader. I thought that was extremely powerful. And he buries Obi-Wan in what appears to be tons of just huge boulders and rocks. We cut back to the Lars homestead, and Luke is running away because he's been yelled to run away by Beru. And Reva gives chase. Back to the duel, and Obi-Wan is using the Force to keep from being crushed by the rocks. And images of the Skywalker children flash through his mind. There were 6 images of Leia and 2 of Luke. So I'm guessing
course.
Leia is 3 times as important. Message deciphered, KK. Your message has been deciphered, Kathleen Kennedy, and
Nice try.
rejected. Because without respect, we reject.
We reject.
So the flashback gives Obi-Wan the motivation to escape. The duel between Obi-Wan and Vader is rejoined after Obi-Wan escapes his rock tomb. And I find it's quite exciting until we get to the moment where Obi-Wan assumes the Jesus Christ pose, lifts up more rocks than we have ever seen a single Jedi lift in any Star Wars canon, and hurl them repeatedly at the pace of a machine gun at Darth Vader. And we think back to, I mean, even if you go back to where it starts to get a little ridiculous in Attack of the Clones at the end, where Dooku and Yoda are fighting using the Force. Nothing this overpowered ever
happened.
Ever. And
Vader Yoda had trouble enough
up,
with the fuel tank, right?
Yes.
That Dooku was going to drop on them.
Yeah.
So.
And Vader gets up.
Yeah.
And he shakes it off, and he can keep fighting.
Going to call bullshit on that one.
Yeah, visually cool, but not canonically accurate based on what we know about how the Force works.
And that's why I say this episode is more like a comic book.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's not Star Wars.
Back to Tatooine. And Reva is chasing Luke. She can run, even though the insides of her guts have been burned with a lightsaber with an injury that had killed Qui-Gon Jinn. She is now running. In fact, she's running like a trans woman who used to be ranked 554th pre-transition and is now ranked 5th on the track team. I'm sure she'd have been first, but again, it's the hole that's been burned through her gut.
So true.
Too soon?
Nicely done. Very good. Very good.
Back to Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and Obi-Wan closes on Darth Vader and damages his chest box using the hilt of his lightsaber. And Vader doesn't defend himself at all. I did see, Vader drops his lightsaber down to his right. And yeah, be it a good move or not, Vader doesn't attempt to defend himself or move away. I suppose he's still kind of woozy from being pummeled with tons and tons of rock. They copy Star Wars Rebels season 2 finale, which is called Twilight of the Apprentice, where Ahsoka Tano cuts open Vader's helmet to reveal Anakin underneath. And I find that in these scenes, there's a very good use of color to illustrate feelings of the dark side, the light side, and even a little bit of purple to show balance in the Force.
I knew about that scene. I thought, yeah, very interesting. I like what they did, and I like where he said, you didn't kill Anakin, I did.
Yes.
So that was a nice touch. I've got to give them kudos for that. Quite well done.
I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And then Obi-Wan says, well, then my friend is truly dead. So here's my issue with this. If Obi-Wan is there to do what he must, he should finish Vader then and there. If Anakin is not salvageable and Anakin is dead, then Obi-Wan should do what he must, which is kill Vader.
Obviously,
but he can't.
Not obvious to the goofs who wrote this script.
Precisely. He can't do that. Why? Because of episodes 4 through 6. Vader is still present in episodes 4 through 6. So my question, with massive frustration, is why choose to tell this story? It makes no sense if you can't give it the gravity and consequence it deserves. It's a goddamn waste of my time. What have I been watching for 6 episodes? Some propaganda about how Leia is better than Luke, 3 times better than Luke. Some waste of time storyline following Reva, whose motivation keeps flip-flopping. Is she there to kill Vader? Is she there to catch Obi-Wan? Is she there to kidnap Princess Leia? Why does she want to kidnap Princess Leia? To get Obi-Wan so she can release him and put a tracker? It's just ridiculous. It's like a fugue. It's like a snake eating its own tail, but it can't catch it. It's ridiculous. Stupid. Waste of my time.
Yeah. All it was bang, flash, saber fight.
That's right.
That's what it was there for.
It's there for content. It's the sake of content.
Yeah,
it's not to tell a good story. It's content.
Trying to drag us in, trying to drag in the old fans by showing Obi-Wan fighting Vader. Oh, he's going to fight Vader. So come back and subscribe to Disney Plus.
That's what it is.
Right.
Well, you know what? I would still be subscribed to Disney Plus. I would if you hadn't fired Gina Carano and you didn't support sexually grooming children.
That's right.
Obi-Wan leaves the planet, completely unmolested by Vader's Star Destroyer, I'll add. Meanwhile, on Tatooine, Reva catches Luke, and Obi-Wan senses this on the other side of, well, I don't know how far this planet is from Tatooine, but he senses it across the vastness of space. He senses that Luke is in danger using the Force. Reva ignites her lightsaber to kill Luke, and then sees her younger self sitting there in the place of Luke. So, as I understand the representation argument, I need to see a person who looks like me on the screen to identify with that character, which is why the original Mark Hamill Luke Skywalker must be replaced with people like Reva, with, you know, people like the clones. We have to have everybody represented. Yes? All different races, all different shapes represented. Well, if that's the case, how could Reva possibly see her young self where Luke is? She shouldn't be able to identify with Luke if the representation argument is true. But I'm going to say, of course, the representation argument is false. Of course, it's not true. We can identify with whatever we see on the screen because they're human, and we know that they're human.
Even if it's the lovable droid R2D2.
Yes, you don't have to look like a person to identify with them, and to say that you do. Guess what? We have a name for that. You know, and it starts with the letter R and it ends with asceticism. Don't be an asceticism. It's ridiculous.
That's right. You better check what you're doing there, legions of woke.
Yes.
You're causing reverse racism yourself.
Well,
I totally support IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Sure.
But not at the expense of any one of those colors in the spectrum. Out of curiosity, which color of the rainbow represents hetero? Just curious.
So Obi-Wan lands at the Lars homestead, and it doesn't take him very long to get there. So I guess he was pretty close. I guess this planet that he had the jewel on is quite close to Tatooine, because he lands at the Lars homestead and sees Reva carrying Luke out of the desert. Reva tells Obi-Wan that she couldn't kill him. She couldn't kill Luke, and Obi-Wan says that her mercy has given her fellow younglings peace, and who she becomes is now up to her.
So if it wasn't for Reva being merciful, Luke would be dead, and Obi-Wan would fail his mission to protect him.
Affirmative. Yep. So, Obi-Wan helps her up, sets her on her way. Mustafar, we're going to Mustafar now, and we're at Vader's palace where he's having a Zoom call with Emperor, I guess he's not Emperor yet, Palpatine, because there's still a Senate, right, until just before the Battle of Yavin. And Palpatine questions Vader's loyalty, and he wonders if it's still with his old master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Vader says that he serves only Palpatine, and finally, we finally hear the Imperial March.
I remarked that to my wife. Finally, Vader's theme. I guess it's only one strain.
So we are now on Alderaan, and we see little Leia getting herself ready, and she has changed out of her fully formal wear to semi-formal with a gun holster. She's got Tiva's gun holster, and she has got some cool type of riding boots. So she's kind of a mix of action hero and politician. She's back to her old life, I guess, and she's a little less wild. And when she says to her father, she says to Bail Organa, if I'm going to do this, there are some things I'm going to want to change. And I'm guessing she means if I'm going to lead and be involved in politics, there are some things that need to change. And he agrees to change them with her, to change them together. So power to Leia. Leia is a very strong character, and I really like Leia as a 20-year-old. I really like Leia as a 30-year-old. Oh my God. Leia, I think the Leia that we see in Return of the Jedi is probably the best Leia for me that I've ever seen. And it's not just because of the metal bikini. I was thinking of more of how she acts on Endor. I thought she was excellent on Endor. Obi-Wan arrives, and Leia is extremely excited to see him. And then Lola shows up, and she runs towards Lola. So she immediately forgets that Obi-Wan is there and runs to Lola instead, which is more typical of what a 10-year-old is like, to be honest. Obi-Wan tells Bail to ask him if he ever needs help, to just reach out to Obi-Wan. And he tells Leia how excellent and awesome she is, and that it's because of her parents. And I did like this. I liked how he gave 3 values that she inherited from her mother and 3 values that she inherited from her father. Oh, nice to be a bit inclusive and not, bash the males, which seems to be a favorite pastime of some of these woke people. Yeah. In the cheapest trick that probably got under my skin the most of all the cheap tricks they've used, they attempt to protect all the canon they've destroyed by having Obi-Wan tell Leia that no one must know or it could endanger us both. When he's talking about that, he's talking about their relationship that they've developed over the past 6 episodes.
Well, I could understand why they would put that in, and that's pretty much what you would have to do if you were going to make a series where you're going to have this kind of content. So a small plus to the writers that they actually had the forethought to do that. I would have been a lot more pissed off if they hadn't. Because if they hadn't, that would totally destroy the canon straight off.
Yes. Back on Tatooine, Obi-Wan meets and says goodbye to Luke. So he finally says hello there. We finally hear the line. He says hello there to Luke. And then we cut to Obi-Wan riding through the desert out to where he lives in A New Hope. And what does he come across as he approaches his old homestead? He finds Qui-Gon Jinn's Force ghost waiting for him.
Amazing. They were able to afford 30 seconds of Liam Neeson.
He's got an extremely thick Irish accent. I don't know if you noticed, but he doesn't sound like Qui-Gon Jinn quite so much. Yeah. And Qui-Gon says he has always been there, but Obi-Wan was not ready to see. And he says, come on, we've got a lot to do. Well, then, there it is. And that's the end. So my overall impression of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is, why have this story? It makes no sense. You haven't given it the gravity and consequence it deserves. It is a disappointment. I feel empty inside. It doesn't fulfill any old nostalgic feelings about Star Wars. And I feel like I have been cheated of my time and energy.
I had more excitement from playing Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy. Jedi Outcast was a far superior product to this. If it's a vehicle to try and introduce Riva, you failed. Forget it, KK. You failed. Grade schoolers could write this material.
Well, regarding Disney Plus and what they're doing with Star Wars, I think that we have gotten a few really interesting series, and those are all Mandalorian, right? We got Mandalorian season 1, quite good. Some forgettable episodes in there, but mostly good. Same with season 2, followed by one of the best pop culture moments that we have received in 20 years with the return of Luke Skywalker when he comes to collect Grogu.
Return of Luke as he should be.
Luke as he...
Obviously, it had to be kept secret.
Yeah. Luke as he is, I would argue. I would argue that's Luke.
As he is.
Nothing else is Luke.
Right.
It's Jake. Right?
That's how you do Luke.
Yeah. That's Luke. They do it. They represent him as he is. Like in this last episode, they represented Obi-Wan more like he's supposed to be. Not exactly, but more like he's supposed to be.
Vader, more or less as he should be. Probably more than less. Except for losing to Obi-Wan. I don't think he would. But then there were parts of the fight that were just absolutely ludicrous.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely stupid. I don't know who wrote that, but
that doesn't matter. Look, so going forward, it depends on who's in charge. It's clear to me that Kathleen Kennedy was in charge and had directed her attention to properties like Indiana Jones and that other series, that African series that got yanked away from her. And then she saw what was going on. It's like Sauron's eye. That was the code they used to use. Sauron's eye is present. It's like Sauron's eye is looking for Frodo and Sam, looking through Mordor for Frodo and Sam. And suddenly Aragorn comes to the Black Gate and his eye is distracted and looks to the Black Gate. So Sauron's eye, Kathleen Kennedy, was all over Lucasfilm and that African project, right? And suddenly she sees what's going on with the Mandalorian, and her eye is back on Star Wars, and she is destroying it with her influence, like she destroyed the original movies with the sequel trilogy. She is destroying it. So if she is in charge, if it's not Jon Favreau, who I think, quite frankly, is going to have to dance moving forward. I think he's going to have to dance. And I don't think we're going to get the quality we've gotten from him anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be garbage.
Best he could.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think same with Dave Filoni. I think David Filoni is a yes man. I don't think he has original thoughts of himself, and I think he's for himself. I think he's just playing a self-preservation game. We don't even know what David Filoni really cares about, because all he does is whatever the boss tells him to do. If it's Kathleen Kennedy or frickin' J.J. Abrams or that other guy, Ryan Johnson, who's in charge, David Filoni will say, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. 3 bags full, sir. How high do you want me to jump?
Exactly.
And I think you need to have somebody like Jon Favreau in charge that isn't under anybody's thumb.
He should absolutely be in charge, and he should not be under anybody's thumb. That's how George Lucas did it. That's how it needs to be continued.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to reject it.
Big mistake to sell to Disney. And even he sees it now, George.
Okay, well, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for watching this far. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe. Go ahead and share it with your friends. We'd really appreciate it.
Yep.
Anyhow,
absolutely.
Okay, so thanks for watching. Thank you, Necromancer. I hope you have an excellent day or evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. And I will attempt to do the same.
Take care, Oni Senshin.
Okay, all the best to you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Genki de.